give you breaks and make it entertaining and enthusiastic. I know, so many things. So you guys do your best to pay attention, and don't worry, I've got like treats to throw at you, so like keep your eyes peeled, okay? So I'm gonna jump right in tonight. So what are we doing here tonight? Okay, so we are building our fence to protect kids and families. Protection matters. This can have a lifelong impact on kids. Okay, and so we are building our fence to protect kids and families. So what do I mean by this? Okay, so what I mean by building our fence. When we talk about what we're doing, we have to first talk about who we're protecting, from what we're protecting them from, and from whom are we protecting against, okay? So I want to dive into this a little bit as we get started. So a few definitions that help in this. So sexual assault, that's an adult-to-adult misconduct. Sexual harassment is also adult-to-adult. And then sexual abuse is adult-to-child, and peer sexual abuse is child-to-child. And so tonight, we are talking about protecting children, protecting our kids. And so we're focusing in on sexual abuse and peer sexual abuse today, okay? So that's kind of who we're protecting. Who are you protecting? Children. Okay, awesome, great. Okay, so now we're gonna jump into a little bit about like who and what are we protecting against. So again, we're protecting kids against sexual abuse and peer-to-peer sexual abuse. And then this is a little bit about who we're protecting against. Okay, so this first one, everyone say out loud. Can you read it? It's a hard word. Oh my gosh, you guys are so smart, okay? Preferential offenders. I'm gonna say this term so many times tonight, okay? You're gonna get bored of it, but I hope you become really familiar because this is the important term. So this is somebody who prefers a child as a sexual partner and will have a preferred age, gender, and specifics about that child, okay? And so when I talk about who we're protecting against, I'm talking about the preferential offender because there are different types of sexual abuse and there are different types of offenders. And we have to understand this to best protect our kids, okay? When I talk about us building our fence, that's our safety system. Has anyone tried to build like a fence around their garden and like they know exactly what they're protecting against, right? Like, man, I have rabbits that come eat all my carrots in my garden. What kind of fence are you gonna build? You know, I don't really know, probably a low fence, right? You get it. You gotta know what you're protecting against to build the right kind of fence around it, okay? So we need to understand this preferential offender and what it is and what they do so that we can build the proper fence to protect our kids. This is different than the abduction offender, okay? So this is something that I would guess many of you guys are familiar with. This is where that term like stranger danger comes in. Has everyone heard stranger danger? Good. So this is important, but we need to know the difference between these two offenders because oftentimes organizations have really great safety systems in place for the abduction offender. And that's great, that's awesome. That's what you've like learned and grown up with. You've probably had a school assembly about it, depending on like kind of where you fall in there. But the thing is that this type of abuse from an abduction offender is much, much less frequent. It is only about 4% of the problem in sexual abuse. Preferential offenders account for about 94% of abuse. So when I talk and I say that is so important, it's super important to understand that because that is what we're protecting against, is the preferential offender, okay? So let's recap a little bit, okay? So what are we doing? We're building our fence. We're protecting children from sexual abuse by preferential offenders. That is what we're doing, okay? Everybody tracking? Good. Okay. So tonight's training is going to be, we're going to talk about our safety system, okay? So when I say system, it's because there's multiple parts in this that all matter, that all help us build this fence, that all help us protect our kids, okay? So there's skillful screening, there's background checks, there is sexual abuse awareness, policy and procedures monitoring, and oversight, okay? So this is all important system for us to understand. Because churches specifically are an easy access point for offenders. Churches are notorious for cheap grace. We are easy to trust people. We are a culture of forgiveness, and these are good things, but that makes us an easy target. So we have to understand these things because if we mess this up, nothing else we do with our kids matters. That's okay.
Sorry.
You're good. we mess this up, nothing else we do matters. And I want to put a little caveat before we go on here is that I'm not an expert. I've done the research. I've gone through the courses. I've learned from people before me who have trained me and have done the research. I've learned from the experts. And so a lot of what I'm teaching is stolen from other people, stolen from the experts. So know that as we go into it. And I also, before we dive deeper into this, is I want to put a little trigger warning on the stuff we're going to dive into. Statistics tell us that some of you in this room have experienced abuse. And if that is you, I'm sorry. It is not your fault. Along the way, something was done to you that should not have happened. And abuse should never be allowed. This training is for you because abuse should not happen. And some of this may be triggering, and I encourage you to take your time to give yourself grace and to make it through this. We all need to work together to prevent abuse. And if you're someone today still experiencing abuse, know that help is available and that you are not alone and you deserve better in that. Okay, so how are we we're gonna talk about all these things, but I want to draw a little bit of attention to this diagram here, where I talk about look, this is our gate that we're building. This is our sheep pen is how some people will call it, but this is where we put our children in here. What we're gonna focus on tonight is policies and procedures and awareness training. There is also all of this, which is important, and I'll touch on that a little bit, but we're gonna focus mostly on here because you guys are the people who already have gained access past this gate. You guys are the people working with the kids in there, so that's what we're going to focus on here. But I don't want to discount that this is also important to understand how we let people in as well, too. Okay, great. So, great. Sexual abuse awareness training. So this is good stuff because we need to be able to see abuse, to recognize it, to prevent it. And so we're going to talk about how we know. We're going to build awareness of abuse and how it can happen. This is this awareness training. We're going to see, we're going to ensure constant supervision and monitoring in place. That's when we're going to talk about policies and procedures. And then we're going to respond and take immediate action to address red flag behaviors and allegations of abuse, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end here too. So like I said, awareness training is we need to understand the problem, we need to be aware of the problem, and we need to recognize the problem in order to do anything about it. We need the eyes to see and the voice to say something about it. And this is in order all to better understand who are we protecting against? What's that term? Yes, this is all in order to better understand the preferential offender. Okay, so reminder, this type of person has no visual profile. They look like you and me. They fit within this community. You never would have guessed it, is a common term people say when they realize that somebody is this. And the thing is you can't recognize this risk visually, so we must recognize its behaviors. So that's how we're going to kind of talk a little bit into this, okay? All right, so to dive into some of this, ignore this and just read this. Can I have somebody who to read the first one for me? You go to Starboard. Just read it out loud, it's all on the screen.
Sexual abusers will seek access to children where protective barriers are low.
Thank you. Awesome. So sexual abusers seek access where protective barriers are low. So protective barriers in the church tend to be low. We've already talked about this. So creating a target for predators is kind of that setting. So this is, again, church is an easy access point, so we need to be aware of that. Next one, can someone just read that one?
Less than 10% of sexual abusers will ever encounter the criminal justice system.
Yes. A background check will identify only a fraction of abusers. Thank you. I'm a really good thrower. Background checks are vital to our system. That is a part of our skillful screening, but they are not a catch-all. They are not an effective system on its own, but they are a part of this system here. Okay, next one.
Sexual abuse is truly an issue of epidemic proportions.
Thank you. Sexual abuse is 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. 90% of sexual offenders who abuse minors were male. 66% of abuse victims will not speak up until adulthood, if ever. This is happening in and around our communities, our ministries. This is a problem that is happening. All right, next one. It's this one if you lost track.
There is no visual profile for molesters.
Yes. We already talked about this, but preferential offenders have no visual, sorry, I'm holding it but not giving it to you. Most of them have no visual look, okay? So lots of times the preferential offender appears helpful, trustworthy, and responsible, and come from all different backgrounds. They are not from one type of job, one type of place, one type of look, but they all look different. And the last one.
90% of victims are abused by someone they know and trust.
Yes. This is again the preferential offender. This is different than stranger danger. There's a misconception that the abuse is coming from someone outside of the community, when 90% of the children who are sexually abused are victimized by somebody that they know and trust. Sexual abusers groom children and they groom the gatekeeper. We're going to talk about that more, but we need to recognize this process and this problem to be able to see it. And again, 1 in 3 reported sexual abuse cases are peer-to-peer. So this means child to child, and this is growing. This is a significant issue, especially post-pandemic. So again, characteristics of an abuser. Again, we need to understand this one. I told you we're going to get tired of seeing it. So preferential offenders, they prefer a child as sexual partners. There's no visual, there's no look. They fit within their community. You can't recognize them, and that's important to know. So a couple definitions, and we dive into the grooming process. Has anybody heard about the grooming process? Is this a common word? I hope so. So again, we need to understand the preferential offender and how they do this. So grooming is that behavior. So it's any manipulative behavior that is used to prepare and coerce youth into sexual activity. So often abusers use strategies like inappropriate language or inappropriate touch, alone time, favoritism, contacting youth outside of program times to build a relationship with them. They are looking for ways to slowly push boundaries to make them acceptable. They're looking for access in order to get what they want. So they build trust. They build trust with the kids and they build trust with these gatekeepers. So these gatekeepers, these are people who control access. Okay, so raise your hand if you know who a gatekeeper is. Somebody tell me who a gatekeeper might be.
Jackie.
Yes. Yes, thank you. What else? Who else? Yes, would you like to?
No.
Oh.
Don't get you candy.
You are all gatekeepers. We are all gatekeepers. We are all people who control access to children. So when I say that abusers groom kids, they also groom gatekeepers. They also groom us. However, the thing is that grooming is visual, so it's preventable. We can see grooming, we can recognize the process of grooming, so that makes it preventable, and that is a good thing. Great. So, if a stranger walks up the street and says, I want to volunteer with youth group, and I want to go on this retreat that you guys are going to on this weekend, I've never been here, I've never done it, but I'd love to go and love to serve. What would we tell them?
No.
Thank you anyway.
It's an easy no, right? Why? Because we have policies in place that say like, that actually might not be okay. There's a little bit of a red flag of like, why do you want to go on this retreat this weekend? Okay? However, if someone slowly comes into the church, spends time with us, is a part of our community, gains our trust, is helpful, and then asks to maybe volunteer with the youth group, that no is going to be a little bit harder to say. We might let them in, right? And that's because they have become helpful and trustworthy and kind. And it's important for us to understand these things. Now, I want to say that just because somebody's helpful, trustworthy, and kind does not make them a preferential offender, okay? We want people who are helpful, trustworthy, and kind. The thing is that we need to be able to recognize this so that we can see it through these lenses. Because when somebody's helpful, trustworthy, and kind, our guard goes down. And we can't let our guard go down when we're protecting our kids. So that is what's important. So the grooming process, again, this is visual, so preventable. So the first thing in the grooming process is that a preferential offender is looking to gain access. For these offenders, they have a specific age and a specific sex that they're looking for. So they're seeking opportunities to get access to that kind of a kid. If they are looking for a 5-year-old boy, they're going to go where the 5-year-old boys are at. If they're looking for a 12-year-old girl, they're going to go there. They are looking for ways to gain access there. And that looks like career volunteer opportunities that are related to kids. The preferential offender is looking for that name tag. Think about like all of us at camp who wear a name tag, and that lets people know that we're supposed to be there, right? That we're safe and we're trustworthy people. So that's like the image I like to use, where they're looking for that name tag status. They understand that they might need to go through a process to get that name tag, right? And so if they want that name tag, they're going to go through it, go through that process. And so this is where some of that before you enter the gate process comes in handy, of that screening process, of those background checks. Our goal in those things, why we have those and why they may seem like a little excessive sometimes, is because we want the preferential offender to look at those things and to say, that's not worth my time. That's not easy for me to gain access. I'm going to go somewhere else. So we are trying to stop them before they even get in here for those things. That's where some of these go, because they're gaining access. Gaining access also looks like gaining the trust of gatekeepers. So again, this is that appearance of being helpful and trustworthy and responsible. They're going to make the organization, the ministry, think that they are valuable and needed. They are skilled at knowing what kids want and what they need. They know what's cool, what's not cool with kids, and they're skilled at talking to kids. They're skilled at talking to those kinds of people. And again, all of these things are normal, and they don't necessarily point out preferential offenders specifically, but again, we need to have that lens on so that we can be aware of some of these things, so that we can be looking at these things with this lens on, okay? So number one, they're gaining access. Once they've gained access, they are gonna select a child. And so there's information and there's research out there that helps us understand this process, that helps us understand how offenders select children. Okay, so this is very specific and researched. So they are looking for children who are unconnected, who they're on the fringe, or maybe in need. Again, they're looking to kind of remove them from the pen. They're looking to take them away, to isolate them. So if they're already a little isolated, it's going to be a little bit easier. They're looking for children who are looking for someone to trust or to follow. They are looking for kids who are coming maybe from a broken home or a single parent home. Again, statistically, broken homes or single parent homes, it is the mother who is in their life, not the father. And statistically speaking, an abuser is a male. And so that's an easy access point if they're already looking for maybe that father figure. And they're looking for kids who are maybe already involved in alcohol or drugs. This leads to secrecy, which we'll talk in a little bit. Because again, they're looking to carve that child outside of the pen, creating isolation where bad behavior can happen. Okay, so they do this by what they call setting a hook. So usually this is about rule breaking in the process, okay? So the abuser will select their child, and the way that they'll remove them is by setting this hook, and this involves rule breaking. So this could look like if this kid at home is not allowed to watch this certain TV show, then this offender comes in and lets them watch that TV show and says, don't tell your parents because you'll get in trouble. Creating a secret, it's creating an isolated event, it's creating them to be away from everybody else and setting up that environment that isn't going to be shared with other people. And keeping those things secret so that when inappropriate touch happens, that kid's not going to tell anybody, because if they tell them about the inappropriate touch, they're also going to have to tell them about the rule breaking, and then they might get in trouble. So again, they're gaining access. They're selecting the child, and in selecting the child, they're trying to slowly remove them. And then they're starting to introduce nudity and sexual touch. So this is through a process called barrier testing and erosion. So molesters will test where barriers stand with kids and push against them. So they've selected the child and now they want to test and see what that kid deems appropriate and not appropriate. And they want to push against it when they find it, okay? So barrier testing is the process of moving towards that inappropriate touch. This could look like sexual discussion or joking. And again, this is unique to the kid. It's unique to what type of kid. If it's a 5-year-old, it's going to look different than a 12-year-old. If it's a boy, it's going to look different than a girl. This could be through playful touch or accidental nudity. So by playful touch, I mean, is anything when someone comes up to you and touches you and you know that it isn't okay, but it was playful. So maybe it's okay in this sense of it. And so those messages can be a little tricky for kids sometimes. But accidental nudity, this is something that can be really easy, not as easily here in a church setting that I see, but maybe when you go on a retreat, when you're in a cabin, by accidentally dropping your towel, or like ideas of streaking or skinny dipping. They are creating a culture where nudity is acceptable and cool, almost. Again, so they're starting to introduce nudity and sexual touch with them. And the last thing is they're keeping the victims silent. So the number one reason why kids don't tell is because they don't think anyone's going to believe them. But the fact is that the CDC says that 95 to 98% of allegations made by children are factual. And so this is on us because secrecy, abusers are really good at keeping kids silent. This is because they use tactics like they're giving somebody something that they want and they're saying, I can't do this for everybody, but I can do this for you. It's creating a secret. This is through like shame and embarrassment. Again, they're rule breaking and they don't want other people to know that they broke rules. They're embarrassed by it. Oftentimes kids don't recognize what's happening to them until that inappropriate touch has happened, and even sometimes they don't recognize that it's happening totally. So when they do, they're embarrassed by it, so they don't want to tell anybody. This also happens through threats, direct or subtle. Things that abusers will say is like, no one will believe you if you tell them. This would hurt your parents if they knew. Or something like, this would totally wreck your church if they knew about it. These are threats that keep kids silent. Again, the number one reason is why kids don't tell is because they don't think anyone's going to believe them. So again, that is the grooming process. But again, these are all visual things that help us understand the process preferential offenders go through with sexual abuse. Any questions? So common grooming behaviors, we kind of touched a little bit about this, but some key ones I just want to pull out here is like gift giving. Again, that can sometimes create that secrecy of I can give this to you, but I don't want to give anybody else this. Repeated time alone with the same child. This is why we don't do one-on-ones, which we'll talk a little bit later. Touching children, pushing physical boundaries. Again, this can be playful, but maybe not inappropriate touch yet, but mostly playful. So pushing those physical boundaries, understanding what's appropriate and pushing against it. And then breaking rules and then justifying, rationalizing those rules. Again, pushing against those boundaries of like, it's okay now, it's okay this one time, but we won't do it again. And then pushing more towards those things are again common grooming behaviors. It's why we talk about rules. It's why we follow those rules for those things. Again, this has to do with the wrong place, wrong time, and the wrong people. So I want to take a second and with the people around you or in your little areas, I want you guys to talk through what different grooming behaviors might be common at church. What might be things that like could come up here that could be a part of those things. And again, these are not necessarily behaviors where you're like, man, right away, he gave that person a gift and like out of here. But just be aware of those things. So talk with your group, think about a couple things. Go ahead, go.
No, cause like he was looking at the list, figuring out kind of like go, it's actually kinda hard sometimes. Like I was thinking about it
Okay, 15 more seconds. All right, let's come back together. And then, will somebody share a couple from your group that you talked about? Yes.
A special job for them to do.
A special job for them to do. That's
They're all
a,
helpful around here.
yeah, that's a great one. Watch out. Ooh.
Whoa, that was coming high.
What else we got?
Yes, safety goggles.
Come on, Annie,
It's like
you're
you're pressuring the group.
Here's some secrets. I'm right here in the secrets.
I feel like somebody's got something right over here.
Jamie had shared before that kids who are often like late to be picked up and someone kind of just being like, oh, don't worry, I can stay with them and be
Mhm.
one-on-one in that way.
Yeah.
Or offering to drive them home all the time.
Yes. Ooh, that's a great one. Offering to drive them home repeated times. Again, no one-on-one, so who's that second person in that car, you know? But also that's a great behavior to watch too, if it's a repeated thing. That's a great way to like, also they've probably already gained the trust, right, of the parents and the youth leaders to be able to take that kid home or offer that, right? They're helpful. What else? One more. Here you go. Thank you. Thank you. One more. Come on. These are good ones.
Well, the importance in the church of having, not isolating yourself with kids. In other words, why it's important to have two adults or adults and teens, that there's a team there so that you're not isolating kids with one person.
Yeah, definitely. Ready?
Sure.
That's a great one. Again, no one-on-ones. We want to make sure that we are above reproach on some of those things. Okay, that's great. Hopefully it got you thinking a little bit towards what behaviors could come up in this process, in this setting too, for these things. That's great. All right, keep moving. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about peer-to-peer abuse. So understanding this is important because it is real, it is common, and it is growing. We not only need to protect kids from the preferential offender, we need to protect kids from themselves. And so the preferential offender is one problem, but so can other kids be there. So 1 in 3 of the sexual abuse that is committed by, 1/3 of the sexual abuse committed is by somebody under the age of 18, and children as young as 4 or 5 may engage in peer-to-peer abuse. So how does this happen? Peer-to-peer abuse happens when there's an imbalance of power. So this imbalance of power can come from age. Typically we look for an older than 3-year age gap is kind of what we're looking for, is that difference in balance of power. This is one of the reasons why we segment for ages, why we don't have high school and like 3rd grade programming together. It's one of the things. Another imbalance of power can be larger kids and smaller kids, or maybe more physically intimidating kids and smaller kids. This could also come from social statuses, or this can come from mental or intellectual states with kids as well too. This is where that imbalance of power can happen, where peer-to-peer abuse is possible, okay? So where does this happen? This can happen anywhere where clothes can come off. So bathrooms is the #1 place. It's the #1 place where this happens. Where kids may remain unseen, and youth will sometimes seek to gain privacy for this. So again, bathrooms are a great place for this, why it's the riskiest place. Any situation where children are less closely supervised too. So again, back to the bathroom. This could also be like the playground. outside. Or maybe there's some hidden spots around, or in the slide, there could be some places. Again, anywhere where they may be less closely supervised for these things. So again, I want you guys to maybe get with the people who serve in the same age demographic as you. So like buoy people together, kids crew together. You all know who you serve with. If you serve in multiple places, don't worry, we'll do this again. So like choose one now, choose another one later. But I want you guys to get in your groups, and I want you guys to talk about where some of the riskiest locations, or maybe the riskiest times, where peer-to-peer abuse could occur for your specific ministry that you are serving in, okay? So I'm going to brainstorm a couple lists of specific places or maybe specific situations where peer-to-peer abuse can happen. And then we'll do that for a couple minutes, and then I'll ask you another question in a couple minutes. So, does that make sense? Okay, feel free to move chairs, go ahead.
Where you guys wanna go? Let's go here.
Don't go too far, stay close.
We're kicking your way out. See you later.
If you guys are with like the nursery, I can give you like another helpful count in the nursery. Babies are hard.
All right, location.
What? The nursery.
That's for sure. Well, that's one of those places. Yeah, winter camp for sure.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Even like when they get here, like they.
Or even just before, you know, right, well, yeah, like, or like before, or like when you get dropped off and stuff like that, like, we're trying to get set up for things, it's not, hasn't started official, but, you know, it's kind of the same thing, you know. Right, right. Like different areas, for sure, yeah. Yeah, you can see those, here.
I mean, when Bowie meets, there's like literally nobody upstairs. There's all the rooms.
I mean, yes, well, I guess like.
Yeah, like all this one. Like one room, one upstairs.
Right, so everyone's kind of together, you know, at that point, but. Right. Okay, yeah, yeah. Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, I try to limit what they do for that reason. I know other reasons too. Right, little one stall, so it's like. At least in the middle.
Right, yeah, it's like. Cause you guys don't make sure it's anybody that they're getting to.
Compass doesn't help. Like, once they're compass age, they can check themselves out. Upstairs, they all have to be checked out by parents. But if they're in a
Even like checkout time, like once they're out of the room.
But, and I don't know how we.
From the room to
Actually,
the transition, we already have it on there, but just like the,
even more.
their parents.
Okay, Okay, pause for a second. Now that you've talked about a couple possible locations or times or situations, talk about how you can prevent it in those times. What are some strategies? What are some solutions that maybe you guys can think through or talk through in those situations to kind of prevent it? Keep going.
And then like the peer-to-peer, if you want to.
Am I?
It's true. Which is a positive thing.
Tell me more, like, when I go to my house.
Like I would not really completely trusting that it's like they're gonna get to the place that they're gonna be at, wherever it is that they're.
Right.
That's fine. Exactly. Yeah.
That's my one.
The girls coming back home working.
Yeah.
That
Or like
see
showing
the next
videos and
what
stuff
are-
like
what
that.
about this?
I mean, it's not here.
It's shared stress relief.
One of those where
Right.
Burlington, like, our kids, place or something. We weren't too impressed with the association factor, the Burlington place, because they were like showing videos and stuff like that to each other. It was like a college student or person that was like sending the kids off to go get like across the street. You know, like there's a lot of things in it, like the bathroom was like outside the building and like separation and different things.
So to any of that, is there
You know,
anything?
but that was different, you know, like thinking through that a little bit, you know, like, oh, you see this video, like, you know, or like meme or something like that, like that could be something that and stuff like that. Like all this inappropriate.
I mean, then you could at least be like, oh, there's two kids that wanna.
Find something out of funny video, but also let it go into.
Well, and I feel like having the conversation in here, like, oh, that's that transition time, it's like, oh,
Something like that.
oh, yeah, right, yeah, but they're thinking people are.
But at least like we're in here and seeing two, like an adult and a kid downstairs. Because that's a little bit. But they're in that floor or something.
All right, take one more minute, and then we'll come back together.
Right, setbacks upstairs, yeah. So it's.
Even like how patients just like follow them all out. Like I mean, especially last night, like there's Boo was here, and then it's like when Boo is here, like then I wouldn't know necessarily if like she looked that way, you know. But like last night it was like okay, I knew they all like everybody could follow them all out, and then there was one student that was so laughter that the parent was crazy, laughed like that was me along with that student. So just making sure like the mentor stays with me until, or another adult stays with until it's all right.
And there are some things that do that.
So like middle school, you have to be getting the.
All right, let's come back together. Come on in. Yeah. Right there.
We're being wrangled.
Great. Right now we're going to problems and answers.
Yeah, because, yeah.
Don't walk away.
We got some.
All right. For each group, can one person give us like your big like takeaway or some like key, 2 or 3 key things you guys talked about in your group? Let's start with Boo. You guys were up front.
Yes, there are things we should do better.
What specifically? Give us a little bit.
I think you guys can correct me here, but specifically the transition times before and after or between,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not monitoring or present.
Yeah.
They're walking in and out on their own and.
Mhm. Yeah, transitions are a huge thing, and then like what you said of monitoring, we aren't monitoring it when we are present. Those are 2 like key things to just be aware of. Kids crew.
We were doing more compass, like kind of
Compass.
We had the same idea with the transition times, or even kids getting dropped off early and you're still setting up for the class, or things like that. And then we also talked about winter camp
Mhm.
and events that we have at Covenant Harbor, wherever, where we're off-site,
Mhm.
and the dangers that come by
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, totally,
Especially
totally.
with your
Yeah, it's easier to identify places in your setting, right? It's easier to name those things, and it's easy to come up with those policies. Easy is a relative term, but like, you can name them, you can fix them. When you go off-site, there's a whole nother layer there, for sure, so that's a good thing. Okay, kids grow in the back, that's what you guys were, right?
So, they're not really in a group, so I was explaining all of our different groups, but in talking about them, I would say those back stairwells are very easy, and we decided that it's everyone's job all the time to keep checking them, even in those transitions, that even if you're not on or you have a group, just to check. And then we came up with the bathroom idea, the 2 bathrooms on there, but she had said, one thing being in the preschool area that she had done is that they required them to go into stall bathrooms, so that stall bathrooms could be easily looked in, versus the 2 bathrooms that are across from the kitchen, where multiple kids could go in and lock the door.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about bathrooms right after this, but you're naming a lot of really good points. What else? What other groups am I missing? What did you guys talk about?
We talked about our kindergarten through 2nd grade classes. Peer-to-peer could happen, but it's not as likely, but I was like hide and seek, or like things where anybody's closing their eyes, and like, I'm never closing my eyes. The things I was thinking about.
I will not blink.
Well, I mean, even on the playground, the kids wanna play hide and seek, and it's like, that's when something could happen.
Yep, I think.
So it just made, it wasn't something I hadn't thought of, like, that's a game I always thought of as innocent, but it's like that.
Yeah. Hide and seek, sardines, these are games that I am like, we, from a Covenant Harbor standpoint, we don't play those games at all, because they're risky. Hide and go seek, you're isolating kids, you're hiding kids, it's secrecy. Sardines, you're putting kids in one-to-ones in secret locations. So those are just risky things, but also common kids games. Like, we've all played them before, right? But it's hard when you put this lens on and you think about it. I like what you said of like, I just didn't think about it before. That's why we're doing it, is we're just thinking about
How
it.
many of these times have I taken child protection? That's the first time I thought that happened.
Absolutely, I learn a new thing every time, for sure.
See, I feel opposite about the bathroom things, because when we're upstairs, the rule has always been, I mean, I think it's our general policy here, is that you never go one-on-one out there, and so like, an adult would take at least 2 kids, even if 2 of them don't have to go to the bathroom, and only 1 at a time goes in the bathroom. And the rest of us are sitting outside, and if I'm the adult that's doing it, I often tell the person in the nursery, I'm out here with these kids, so I'm just being like, accountable to other people.
Yeah. Saying it to like your other person or your team is like a huge also like benefit of just being like, I'm gonna, even if you're just taking 1 or 2 kids to like room to room, be like, hey, we're just gonna go over here real quick, we'll be right, just verbalizing it is also helpful.
And every once in a while I've been up there early and somebody else comes up early. Like Jonas used to always come early because he just always late. I was like, I would make sure that Carol or whoever's in the nursery, somebody knew that what was going on.
Yeah.
If I could, I mean, you can't because you're in the middle of whatever.
Yeah. And again, you guys are all naming very normal, every moment, typical situations. None of these things, none of this hide and seek or Jonas coming up early, these are not bad things. And these are not things that I'm saying like, never again can Jonas go anywhere early. Like, that's not it, but having this awareness, this lens, and understanding some of these things is what we're trying to do here. So I think that's good. Do you have something, Dan?
Yeah, it's something that nobody really ever likes to hear, but I talk about it a lot, and that's competition. Because when the kids lose and they're not feeling well, that is an easy way for someone to step into that child's life, because they're feeling really down because they didn't win.
Absolutely.
And we don't think about that too often, but it really does create, well, it creates 2 things. One, there's not a sense of collegiality between the whole group that you will always be a part of, and the other is if you do, you really wanted to win, but you found out that you lose. That is a point of, if you have a person that's looking to engage a child, that's where they will go.
Totally. That's great. good job. Keep thinking, these are good ways. Yeah,
I'm
yes.
sorry, for nursery.
Yes.
And also for the 3-4, because, Carol's not here.
Mhm.
What we started doing is, we're telling parents that they have to pick their kids up, not other kids. Because a lot of the older kids, they come and pick those kids up and stuff, and love our church, we're a huge family
Mhm.
and stuff, but we started saying, hey, you know, we love that there's other kids that care for your kids, but we want those parents to come pick them up, because if something happens,
Totally.
say that Etta bumped her head, and then we tell other Etta who picks her up, hey, Etta bumped her head, tell Chris and Kelly. Well, Kelly texts me in the middle of the week, why does Etta have a huge knot on her head? Did something happen? And Etta didn't tell her, then we're at fault because that didn't get connected properly and stuff. So we've been telling them, and the older kids are a little bummed about it, but the parents seem very like, cool, like, all right, you know, like, I'll come pick up my kid, that's fine, so.
Totally.
Yeah.
Really. I think that's great. That's really good. And protecting those little ones who don't have a voice.
Yes.
Too,
Yes.
is huge
Yeah.
too. For sure. And I think you also said something really good there where like the parents didn't even really bat an eye about it. Oftentimes, and I'm not a parent, but I've worked with parents, is that when these policies change or when something happens, we have to do something a little bit different. And we explain it's because we are protecting our kids in this way. Oftentimes they're like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. Like they understand it and it's okay too. So I like what you said there, were like most people are ready to get on board with small changes too like that, which may change our normal or our rhythms and feel like more of like a burden we're putting on them, but oftentimes they're receptive to that. I want to talk about 2 specific locations before we take a break here. One is bathrooms, one is playgrounds, and I want to talk about these in terms of blind spots. And how we can supervise those areas really, really well. So like I said, bathrooms are one of the riskiest places here. At Anchor, you have an advantage where most of the bathrooms that you are using are single stalled bathrooms. Great. One kid in, one kid out. Nobody else in. Awesome. What I want to, can anybody see maybe what some issues could arise with a single stall bathroom in terms of peer-to-peer abuse? It's different than like a stalled bathroom. It's different to where there could be extra people in there. But what about a single stall bathroom? What are some things to maybe think about with those? Can anyone think of anything?
They can lock the door.
They lock. It's a great place for kids to have privacy and to lock the door behind them. So it's real easy to get 2 kids in there and gain the privacy there. Huge, huge thing. Or if they are just maybe hiding in the bathroom and one kid comes in, the door is locked there. So when we think about single stall bathrooms, that could be a huge blind spot where we maybe make the assumption that nobody's in there because it's unlocked. But to just be aware of, maybe we check the bathrooms before one kid enters in is a big one. What else? What other blind spots could happen around bathrooms here at Anchor?
Not necessarily a blind spot for the kids that like need help washing their hands.
Yeah.
Not having that door closed behind you as you help them.
Yeah, the kids who may need a little extra assistance. How can we go about that? Say like a 6-year-old needs help reaching the sink, right? How can we help get them? We want to help them wash their hands. That's important, right? How do we do that?
Maybe prop the door open.
Prop the door open.
Have stools.
Stools. These are good ones.
Also voice it like, hey, I'm going in the bathroom, go to help so-and-so wash their hands.
Yeah. Having that second person maybe stand in the hallway while you do it, like half in the door, half doing. A good thing I like to say with bathrooms specifically is that they are hard to visually supervise, but you can auditorily supervise them. And that's a big thing as well too, of just maybe standing near the door so that you can listen for those things as well too. Anything else? What else can we think about with bathrooms? What about thinking about bathrooms in terms of like as the whole church? How do we help parents also help us supervise bathrooms maybe?
We have a sign upstairs that says, please toilet your child before dropping them off.
Yes, encourage people to use the bathroom before this meeting, before the group, before any activity happens. That's a great one. Another great thing we could do is having bathroom designated breaks. where everybody goes to the bathroom. And so you can stand at the door and one kid in, one kid out, one kid in, one kid out, and just have that break time with your kids in the bathroom. That's a great one.
I have a specific thought about when we're going to kids crew.
Mhm.
There's 2 adults that are in charge of kids crew. There's an awful lot of kids you're hurting down there. I wonder if we need to have a 3rd or a 4th person just come down to help us with anybody who needs to stop at the bathroom on the way down there.
Yeah.
I'm being crazy in that thought, but I can't walk into each of those bathrooms and check and see if there's somebody in there before that, and get ready to be in the room for the kids that are coming straight to the room, and.
Or on the way down, like, do that bathroom break or
We
whatever.
have,
Two
but
adults.
still, it's like, it's tricky, because I would, like, half the time they're all running so crazy, that it's hard to be sure.
There was like a long time ago, we had, you know where the 2 bathrooms are, and there's that kitchen counter? The students, the kids would line up there with both adults, and they'd wait until the whole group had gone to the
That
bathroom.
needed to.
Yeah, and then they proceeded into the,
I mean, I don't do kids crew very often.
but that would be a thing that would solve that problem, and you would have time to sweep it, sweep them.
And it would take maybe half the service then?
Yeah.
Well, that's almost one of the problems, like the timing is that.
I don't feel like there's a lot of kids asking to use the bathroom during kids crew. It's only about 20 minutes.
Right.
And they could always just be walked back up to their parents. You could walk them upstairs and say, go find your parent and ask them to take you to go to the bathroom.
I'm not talking about during kids crew as much as on the way down to
Yeah.
kids crew.
Yep.
That's where I was just wondering, I mean,
Yeah.
I would walk out there and help be that person,
Yeah.
even if I'm not teaching.
Would you though, because that's one of our things.
That is one of our things. We don't have a lot of people who want to be in kids crew, so thinking
No,
about
but-
3rd or 4th.
But they do the
person.
bathroom, I'm only gonna be bathroom crew. You're only gonna miss the hook
Then
and the
you got,
beginning
then you got
of
some other issues. You're gonna be like, oh, I thought bathrooms were.
Like, there's a red flag if somebody signs up for them.
Alright, you guys are naming a lot of your really good things about how risky bathrooms can be. This is good to be thinking through these things, to have this lens on it, to think about what does it actually look like on the way down to Sunday morning, go to the bathroom, what are these policies, what are these like rhythms do we want it in place as well too. And again, kids have to go to the bathroom way more than you ever think they need to go to the bathroom, and that's like not a bad thing, and if the minute you ask them to hold it, you know what's gonna happen. So just be aware of these things, have this lens on it as you kind of use the bathroom. Okay, what about playgrounds? Name some blind spots and things to think about with your playground.
I think our playground is pretty good compared to some.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a slide, like a tube slide, I don't have that, but
Mhm.
could do that.
However, they're usually out there by themselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
this is just like a free for all.
Yeah.
Totally.
Which is the same with the downstairs playground. They're usually down there by themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The like open area can be seen by passersby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're naming a good point where like in itself, especially the outside one, like you're naming a reality where playgrounds are like an open space. Anybody walking by, anybody with an ear is gonna be able to see or like hear if like some kid got hurt or some kid fell off something, right? Those are easily places to send your kids. And like, it's very normal to send your kid to go play in the playground when you need 10 minutes, right? But oftentimes playgrounds, are a place that are least supervised because they have this reputation as like almost a relaxing spot to be in, right? So just to be thinking through some of those of like behind something, behind a tree or in the bushes, or just like around the corner of something, or even under. I know there's like a play structure under something there. Like that could be hard to sweep and to see everything you need to as well too. Again, kids can be little. Okay, so playgrounds, bathrooms, when we talk about these things, I want you guys to just be aware of some of those things, aware of some of those moving parts there, and just talk a little bit about how that active supervision is tricky in those spots. They're tricky and it's hard, but it matters and it's important for those things. So we are going to take like a 10-minute break here, and then we're going to shift gears a little bit, but don't forget about what we talked about, because we will revisit it. So I believe there's like snacks and stuff, so take like 10 minutes and then we'll come back together. Break.
And everybody sat in.
Also, I'm gonna go use the bathroom, so nobody.
Thank you.
I'm beating you if they're.
She listened. Everybody announce what you're doing.
We find that from Bowie.
Sure.